if you change behavior 10%, think of like you're sailing from New York to Europe and you change course by 10%, you may end up in Africa.
Yeah.
And so little changes over time have big impacts.
Welcome to The Defense Never Rests with Morgan and Akins, your monthly dose of uncommon sense about all things legal and some that are not.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to this episode of The Defense Never Rests. I'm your host, Megan, and joined by Melissa. Melissa, it's been a hot minute since you've been on with me.
I know. I'm so glad to be back.
I know. Well, we took a little bit of recording break for July, so that's, I think, the reason for your absence.
Doesn't it feel though like things, especially this summer, are just insanely busy in terms of work? Like I thought that this summer everyone goes on vacation, the judges are on vacation, attorneys are on vacation, but this summer, no, everyone is here in July and August and they're ready. They want to do things. So it's been insane.
Yeah, I maybe everyone's going on vacation in August.
Let's hope.
Yeah, I mean, it's a long month. I think people are going away then. I already did my vacation, so I need people to go away in August so I can catch up because I haven't caught up yet.
Yes, they'll go in June.
I don't typically do a June vacation. I did this year, and I'm like, now I know why I do an August vacation because I feel like I need another.
We'll have to talk to our guest about this because I have a feeling she would have some tips.
Yes, we should. So. Nice segue, Melissa. So today we have on Sheila Murphy, and Sheila's a coach, which is I don't think I've had on a coach with me hosting this podcast yet. And they serve such an important role, I think, for people trying to make career transitions or client development, or just like kind of like professional counselors, and a professional like that. I bungled that, but I mean, she helps people like work through issues and, get to where they want to be in their careers or gain more clients or whatever it may be. So I think it's a great asset. So I wanted Sheila to come on to talk about, how she can be a help to other lawyers and reach their, professional goals. So with that, let's bring her in. Good morning, Sheila. Welcome to the Defense Never Rests. How are you this morning?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so happy to have you too. A lot of times on this podcast, we talk a lot about claims and we talk to people in claims, and we're kind of switching gears a little bit today. You're a lawyer by trade, but now you've evolved into coaching and you coach other attorneys and professionals through, career transitions and changes. And I'm excited to talk about that. But first, I want to talk a little bit about I like to dive into how everyone got to where they are, and everyone's path to either in claims or to practicing law or just to law school is all very different. So I'm curious what your path was. I mean, did you grow up in a family that your parents were attorneys, or is it something that you just were like me, was like, I don't know what else to do with myself, so I'm going to do this?
I think like a lot of people, I read and watched To Kill a Mockingbird, and I also watched this old movie, Adam's Rib, with Katharine Hepburn, where she was this female attorney. And it really did influence how I thought about what I wanted to do. I mean, I'm from a family of, on my mother's side, I'm the first one with a 4-year degree. So it wasn't part of my pedigree to sort of think about law school as an option, but I sort of became passionate about the idea that there could be this strong woman who makes a difference.
So, when you went to law school, was it everything that you had thought it might be?
I was so clueless. Like I had no idea. There were people who really, either maybe because they had people in the profession, but they really were thinking about their careers. They were thinking about what they were going to do. The only thing that I decided that I wanted was to find a career where I wouldn't have to speak in public, because I am sort of this ostrich person, a natural introvert. I don't like speaking in public. I have dyslexia, which hurts me with my pronunciation of words. And so I really strove to create a career where I would not have to speak in public. And then I got my first law firm job where I was supposed to be a corporate lawyer. Mm-hmm. And on day one, the managing partner came out and said, we have too many corporate lawyers. We need a litigator. And the litigation department wants you. And I was like, my heart sank. I was like, oh, this is awful. What am I going to do? Can I quit? And I was thinking my parents will kill me if I quit on day one. And so I went through this whole thing of feeling like an imposter in this litigation department. And so that was sort of my introduction to like trying to figure out how to do something differently where I wasn't comfortable.
Yeah. That story resonates so well with me because I too wanted to go into corporate law or real estate, and because I was terrified of like speaking in front of anybody. And even like I summered at the DA's office and I was like, oh no, I don't want to do any of this. They're like, well, why are you here? I'm like, well, it seemed like a good job to put on my resume. I don't know. And then when I graduated, there were no corporate jobs to be found. So I ended up in litigation, and I realized, like, did you come to a point that you got over those fears?
I would tell you, I love the strategy of litigation, and I loved every other aspect except that speaking in public. And so then I went in-house and I thought, glorious, I will never have to speak in public again. Even though I'm in litigation there, I'm not having to go to court. And I sort of had my aha moment when one of my peers, and we'll call him Mike for now, Mike got promoted. And I was sort of shocked. I didn't know promotion was on the table. And to be honest, Mike wasn't a really good lawyer, but he spoke up in meetings. He spoke to people, telling them what they were doing. He cultivated a network. And I sort of had that moment where I was like, okay, I have to change what I'm doing if I want to succeed. Because it wasn't even just about me. It was about my client, the company, that they were not getting what I thought was the better advice from me, but rather from Mike, who wasn't that good.
Yeah.
And so I really started on a journey of trying to change these things. So I get why it's hard for people. It's not always easy. But I will tell you, and you've succeeded in this way too, that you can sort of change those behaviors and those fears and change the trajectory of your career. And by the time Mike left the company, he was reporting to me. And so it did change. And so I just like to tell people that, because a lot of times people are like, well, this is just the way I am.
Yeah.
And how I feel, and I can't move to be any different. And you really can.
Yeah.
Sheila, where do you think that comes from? Because I think that a lot of people experience that sort of, like you said, imposter syndrome and like the fear of public speaking. But for you, was it like public speaking in general, or was it specifically when you were a lawyer? Did you?
No, it was always public. Because I can remember in 6th grade having to do a report on Spain. And I couldn't pronounce the words because they're not words that I normally came across. And everyone kept saying that it's phonetic. You should be able to do this. And for a lot of people who are dyslexic, they can't read phonetically or hear phonetically. And that's why now and then I even have trouble with names that I don't know, even to this day. And so it was just so mortifying to me that I just never wanted to do it. And when I had to do it, I did it. If I had to give an oral presentation in college because no one else was stepping up, because the only thing that motivated me more was not failing, was more motivating than my fear. But yeah.
And how did you finally bust through that? I mean, I know your motivation to bust through it, but like, how did you actually do it? Because it's scary when you don't like to talk in front of people.
What I tell people when you're trying to change behavior, whether it's public speaking or maybe using a carrot rather than a stick if you're managing a team, or becoming more of an optimist, is you can't go from 0 to 100. You have to sort of take baby steps and celebrate those successes. So I started by talking at meetings and having all my notes written out. And then it went to bullet points. Then it went to being able to speak at a meeting fairly off the cuff. And then presentations came up, and I still didn't sleep for nights, but I did them. And the more I did them, the more comfortable I got doing those things. And then I eventually had a really good sponsor once I sort of got the basics and was comfortable speaking, who got me with a presentation coach, because I wanted to bring more of me into what I was saying and less about the facts. I was very factual at that point, and that you don't connect with people in that way. You have to open up about your story and everything else. And so she had me work with a coach to bring that part of the skill that I was missing in.
I kind of love that though, that how it was a gradual process for you, and it was probably a challenge every step of the way, but you were so determined to kind of get past this, that you kept pushing? Because I'm certain it was not easy for you.
No, there are points where I remember saying, why am I doing this? And actually my name of my company is Focus Forward. And that was my mantra whenever I did feel stuck, like just focus forward. And then when you start getting positive feedback, it's easier to build on things. And I also tell people, like, if you change behavior 10%, think of you're sailing from New York to Europe and you change course by 10%, you may end up in Africa.
Yeah.
And so little changes over time have big impacts. And so that's what, you have to sort of think about it in that way, because we've all tried to go on a diet or an exercise regime where we go from 0 to 100, and it never works. So, think about how you can chunk things up so it's doable, so that you can start to see results and build on it.
At what point did you decide to kind of pivot out of, your corporate life and to like start your own thing?
Well, as I said, I started getting teams when I was in Met, and what became apparent is I was really good at developing talent. And, I had a reputation inside the company, outside the company, with the organizations I was working with. People on my teams went to, higher leadership positions, both inside and outside the company. And so I was always put on whatever task force or committee. And I love this aspect of my job. I mean, I love practicing law, but I really love developing talent. So as I was approaching a time where I was going to be hitting my pension number, so to speak, I was lucky in that I had a defined benefit. A couple of years before that, I started thinking about like what I wanted to do next. If I, did I want to stay there past that moment? Did I want to think about doing something else? And I really was being drawn to this talent thing. So I started to explore with my network what that could look like. And so I took baby steps in trying to understand things, because I am a lawyer. So we're not the most risky group that ever, existed, but just start thinking about and exploring what a change could look like and how that could work.
And so what were like your first real steps to making that happen?
Well, I will tell you, having a network that I cultivated and this goes for whatever job you're in today, a strong network is like the number one indicator of success, no matter what you do, whether you're in claims, legal. But having that strong network that I could go to and talk about, I knew some people who had tried to do this. What did they learn? And then I came up with a business plan for myself, and I did a little bit of a portfolio career, and I had some different revenue streams coming in. So I really plotted out what I thought it would look like.
Yeah.
And I also started making sure that, I always spoke about talent and leadership, but that was really becoming my focus. And so to make sure that when I did this, people said, of course, this is what she's doing next. And that's what happened. I got a lot of notes from people saying that this really, to them, seemed like a natural transition. But it's, you don't wake up and start a business or start, something new. You really do need to think about how you want to approach the market, how you want your brand to be seen, and, what's the value that you offer. And so, whether, again, this is the same thing, whether you're in a company or you're an outside counsel trying to develop business, you need to sort of have a plan as to how you are cultivating your career.
Like when you made the decision, like, did you talk about it to anyone, or were you like working on this plan in your head in the background and then kind of like came out with your move to people? And then my second part of the question, what was the reaction of your friends and family?
I would say I talked to a lot of people about this. I really did a lot of research, and I had some friends who were like, don't do this. You could become, a GC at a company. You should be doing this. And I will tell you, until 3 years, I'm still getting friends sending me those positions. But this was, I really made the thing that I wanted to do it. And so I did get, some people were really gung-ho about it and thought that this was really what I was meant to do. And then there were some people who were a little more cautionary, because, getting a steady paycheck is one thing. Launching a business, you're not going to have that paycheck. So you really do need to think about how, your revenue, your marketing.
Mhm.
And, but, from day one, like I said, I got a lot of responses from people who didn't know I was thinking about it. Like, of course you're doing this. This makes so much sense.
How did you quiet the negative voice? I don't want to say negative, but the non-supportive voices. How did you sort of block them out and so you could continue on?
And I would say it was two people very close to me that were more like, do you really want to do this? And so that was hard because they were people who I trusted. They were part of my personal board of advisors and people who I went to. And so I really thought through what their objections were. And I thought about the fact that, to be honest, I had another option out of two law firms if I wanted to go back to the law that had sort of approached me. So I had a cushion. And I said, if I don't take this leap now where everything is lined up for me, I had also had someone offer me to work with as a coach with a group that she was already doing work with, and she had business. So I had a cushion. I had a pension. And I said, if I don't do this now where everything is sort of lined up, I'm never going to do this. And I'm always going to wonder, what could I have done? And so I decided that, it was more important to me to live, maybe live with if it did fail, with the failure, than live with the not knowing, what would have happened if I had pursued my passion.
And that I think is something that drives a lot of people in both directions. Like the fear of trying something new, people are like, oh, I don't know. And then also, but the fear of regret of not doing it. And, so right now when you're working with attorneys or professionals, do you have to work with them through those fears a lot when they're trying to walk through their own job transitions and career changes?
Absolutely. There's, a lot of fear, a lot of inner voices talking about judgment and perfection and, all these different things that stop people from moving on and getting stuck. I worked with one woman who was in-house, and she just had stayed in a role. She'd been, like a lot of people in-house, I hate to say this, now and then you get the same, well, there may be a reorg in the future. And, that may be your moment, or there may be this thing coming up in the future. And she kept waiting. And she ended up getting 2 job offers really quickly with a significant, I think ended up being close to a 6-figure jump in compensation. Yeah, it was a lot. And she had one that was a little bit less than that, but both, and she was just in shock. And a lot of times what we're also fearful of is getting that information, and making that decision. Like, what's the harm in trying? I always say to people, you need to get the feedback so you can make an informed decision, because a lot of times people aren't willing to sort of say, well, we really see you as an individual contributor. We don't see you going up the corporate ladder, or we see you as a counsel. We don't see you as partner material at this firm. And you need that information to sort of say, okay, I'm happy with that decision, and this is where I'm going to work and do things, or I'm going to change your opinion, which happens. I've had clients change how they're viewed in companies and law firms, or they've decided, you know what, I'm going to explore someplace else where I may not be coming in with that baggage, but we still, in those cases, often have to work at some of the feedback, because if you have certain what I'll call derailers, just going into a new company doesn't mean that they're fixed. Mm-hmm. And that behavior may come back and haunt you. And I've seen that happen too.
Well, and I kind of jumped the gun a little bit too. So let's just back up as to coaching. Okay. So I think there's a lot of misconceptions, or people have their own personal beliefs of what a coach does or a career coach does. And maybe it's I feel like there's people don't totally understand, because I don't think anyone's had a real conversation with the coach. Mm-hmm. So, why don't you give us a brief synopsis of what do you do and how do you help people? And why would someone need someone like you to be in their life?
And let me start by
that you're a lovely person.
Everyone needs me in their life. Let me start with there are a lot of different coaches out there, and all really, most of them I think are very good, but everyone has a different approach. So if you are considering working with someone, I would recommend talking to a few and thinking about the chemistry and if their approach is right for you, because we all do vary in our approach. And I see myself as a coach consultant a little bit, because pure coaching is really about talking to you and helping you develop your own strategies. And there is part of that, and and understanding your fears and getting over them. And there is part of that in what I do. But I also, I'd say there's a consultant part to me because of my background. I also help people understand how to better position themselves for the next career step. So there is a lot of me also explaining how things work in the, either in the legal or the corporate fields. And so how they can help themselves get to that next level. So in pure coaching, I might be talking to you about how you should prepare for an interview, and you'll come up with the great ideas of how you're going to do it. In my world, we'll do some of that, and then we'll talk. You'll have my template of interview questions for in-house people, and we'll work through them, and then we'll record, and we'll do feedback, and we'll work on the better way to use corporate terms in your answers and how to most effectuate that. Or and similarly with like LinkedIn profiles or your brand. There's a lot of work where I'll be doing pure coaching to sort of cultivate what is your strengths, what is your brand, what makes you special. But then when we're trying to put it out there now and then, I have to help people and push them. I often get, I can't put that out there. What will people think if I put that on my LinkedIn profile? And it's, interesting that I've had people then go speak to headhunters and they're like, yeah, the headhunters told me you were right, that I need to up it up a little. And so there's those two aspects. So when I work with someone, and again, depends what they're looking for. If they're looking for a new role, or if they're trying to figure out why they're not getting promoted and make themselves more executive material, it may be, or maybe they've gotten some feedback on their derailers, their communication style, how they're not business oriented. It's, we work on those skills. If you're in a law firm, I often mostly work with people about business development. Most law firms, to be honest, don't invest in people for executive training.
No, right.
It's much less than elsewhere. But so it's really also taking a client's perspective and working with people, having been, someone who is retained and hired lawyers. We work again through what's your brand, who's your ideal market. First of all, because a lot of times attorneys who are outside counsel just market to everybody, and without really understanding the needs of their clients. And so then, and our time is our most valuable aspect, or asset that we have. So I talk to people about, where are you investing it? How are you investing it so that the return on that investment is bigger? So, does going to the ABA tax council, where everyone's outside counsel, benefit you if you're trying to build a book of business? Or should you be cross-selling with your partners more and meeting more in-house counsel? So those are sort of some of the things. That was a very long-winded answer.
Is there a common derailer that you see sort of popping up with attorneys who are looking for new positions?
I was two different things. Like sometimes what I hear from in-house attorneys is that they've been told that they're too risk averse and not commercial enough.
What does that mean?
So that they see themselves as legal technicians. So they come in and say, here's all the legal risks, and they don't work with the business to sort of come up with creative solutions. And they're looking for a zero risk, and they're looking to push the business off. And they're not looking at it they're not speaking the business's language. That's a common derailer. So that their companies are like, I can't promote you to deal with higher level business people if you can't have those types of relationships that drive the business forward, or they don't see you as a valued partner. What I see in terms of looking for the next role, some of the common derailers are just I would say getting comfortable talking about themselves, understanding their value, and making the commitment to doing it. And, people will say they're going to turn around everything and do the documents, and they're going to reach out to the people who we discuss, and they're going to make these efforts. But it's really working on that mindset, because there's always a reason why not. Well, it was Friday afternoon and the person was probably getting ready for the weekend, or it's Monday and, they're easing into their week. And so I didn't want to call at that point. And, really, I don't know the person as well as I thought I did. I mean, I had one woman tell me that one of her best friend's mother was a GC at a company. And the woman had said to her daughter, have her call me. And the woman never did. And I'm not going to say she would have gotten business, but I happen to know that GC. And I was like, that woman doesn't say things she doesn't mean. GCs are really busy. When they say they are willing to talk to you, you have to jump on it. But somehow this woman had created a story in her head that, she was just being nice.
Her own imposter syndrome, right?
Yeah, they're just being nice. And so we start to create these stories in our heads as to, what other people are thinking.
We're all great fiction writers in our own mind, it seems.
Huge. We could figure out, if we want to avoid something for fear of rejection, which, oh no, I can't hire you now. Oh, that's horrible. I mean, think about that in the scheme of the things we go through our lives.
Yeah.
That is like nothing,
But I think sometimes though, with a scenario like that, there's like a fear to like make that initial contact. So you talk yourself out of it. It's just that idea of picking up the phone or sending that email may cause someone so much anxiety that then they just work through like why it's a bad idea for them. And then like, we're like, okay, well, yeah, it's right. I shouldn't email them because it was a bad idea. I just told myself it was, so I didn't.
And you did it for like a week and now it's too late. I should, I can't do it now. It was over a week ago, and yeah. And so it's working through those fears. And, even though I coach people through them, I have them myself. That's why I have a business coach and a career coach, because that has been valuable to me in terms of making a difference, in terms of, now and then we all have these things we don't want to do, or trying something new can be difficult. And so, part of being a career coach is to, cheerlead people, but also be a truth teller. Yeah. In my opinion. And, I will be your biggest champion, but I will also tell you the truth because I think you deserve the truth, and that you're a mature enough person who should understand the implications of what you're doing or not doing. Because now and then we think, oh, okay, I make a decision to do something, that's a decision. But if I just do the same old thing, that's a decision too. It's really called a career by default.
Yeah. And, and I think that's appreciated. Like, cause I, even from, on like mine and Melissa's side, it's similar to like when you have clients that you don't want to tell them only what they want to hear, because that doesn't do anyone any good. Sometimes you need to give the bad news or give the opinion that might not be super favorable, but is the, your opinion as to what should happen in this case, or the outlook of exposure on this case, even though it might not be what that client may want to hear. Because if you just tell them what they want to hear, what's going to happen? You're honestly, you're going to
disappoint them when the result comes in with what you really thought. And then you're really in danger. It's so funny when people think sometimes these voices are protecting us. They really aren't. They're actually putting you in a worse position.
Yeah. I had this similar scenario happen just yesterday. I was in mediation and I'm speaking with the client, and I knew that the client wanted to go a certain way with the next step of the mediation. And they asked me what I thought. And I was like, look, I know what you want me to say is to 100% agree with you, but I can't agree with you on this. This is what I think is the next step. Of course I will do, if you really want to do that, I would, but what I think is this. And I think they appreciated the the honesty. Yeah, I hope so at least. But I mean, I couldn't just agree just for the sake of agreeing when I thought another option was the better option in that particular scenario.
As a former client, I agree. I want the opposite things, because sometimes you do, like all of us, when we're on a case, we get tunnel vision. And so I do think you want to hear that differing opinion. And in fact, internally, I did not like my clients who just agreed with me, because I found that troubling. I'd rather have somebody push back on me and have a real discussion about an issue or a concern, because then I know that they have thought through everything. I never like, I know it might be easier just when, this person will do whatever I say, but I found that troubling, because I didn't think we always got the best results.
Okay. So, and you had mentioned, and I want to talk about this before, you mentioned about like looking at your clients, like LinkedIn profiles and, certain like things that help or don't help. And that, so are there any, because I'm interested in this because I'm all over LinkedIn, Melissa's all over LinkedIn, we're always like thinking about how our profiles are perceived. And, are there, from your experience, are there any things that you think particularly stand out on LinkedIn profiles for someone who might be seeking a career shift or might be trying to attract new clients or whatever it may be? Are there certain key things that, or is it an individual basis?
I mean, there's some key things, and they may differ a little bit from outside to inside counsels. So for outside counsel, I see this with inside too, where people just put their title and where they work. And that to me is, and I don't know, I know that Megan, you don't do that, but I haven't seen Melissa's to say that.
I have more than that.
Yeah. So, but people want to know quickly. We have a low attention span in this world. People need to know who and what you are quickly in that headline. And then people need to know in the about what you're really about. So who are your clients? What do you do? Don't tell me you draft motion papers. Who cares? I would expect that. But really a little bit more of the personality, a good picture, a good background so that you stand out. And make sure that you're putting the information that entices a client to want to learn more in your about section. So, giving a sense of how you would be to work with, what's your approach, when should I call you, what's your market. So again, when we were talking about your ideal clients, making sure that it's attractive to them. For those who are in-house, whether in claims or someplace else and want to go up the corporate ladder, I think one of the toughest things for people to understand is the higher you are trying to go, the less it is about your technical skills, your legal skills, your claim skills, and the more it is about your leadership and your strategic initiatives and how you handle cross-functional teams, or how you bring new ideas and processes and improve things. It's more about leadership than technical skills. And a lot of times people focus on the legal skills, and you need to sort of expand that. And it's really critical for those who are looking to switch that you make it your LinkedIn look so that a recruiter can find you. That's one thing. And also, if someone recommends you for a position, that someone looks at your LinkedIn, that it looks like someone they want to hire. It's, if they've got 3 names and one person has a really fulsome LinkedIn and 2 people don't, I'm going to go with the person with the fulsome LinkedIn. People, now I'm going to hear from law firm people, well, we have bios. I go, but you're now telling me I have to search a little bit more for you. And so, clients are, like everyone else, a little bit lazy. And so, but the other thing that is critical, and I think you do a nice job of this because you're really in the insurance area, Megan, is like the podcast, is of interest to your client. So that's what you're promoting. Right. So it's a value to the client. So that's something you want to do is, 80% of in-house people now get their legal information from LinkedIn. A lot of newsletters end in spam, a lot of other things happen. So when you are on LinkedIn and you are putting out information that is important to your ideal clients, like, if you were an insurance attorney, but you're posting stuff about M&A that the firm is putting out or something, who cares? Right. You want to attract your clients so you are top of mind when they have a matter. And they may not, the beauty of, litigation is it doesn't happen all the time. And so you do need to all of a sudden things happen. Like I know that I didn't have much in Alabama for years, and then all of a sudden I was having all these lawsuits in Alabama. So who was top of mind that I had in Alabama that I hadn't used in years? So it's having a strategy that attracts your clients. So you're not just posting things to post it, you're posting it with an intent. And and the same thing for people who are in-house trying to call the ladder. What are you posting? What are you talking about? What conferences do people see you at? What are the issues that are important to you? There are a couple of GCs who actually look to see if people are posting on leadership aspects. So it's something to think about.
And I don't think any of this is new, but the game has certainly changed. Like it's not, it's not just networking. It's not just how good you are at your job. Like you have to complete this whole package, don't you think? So a prospective employer or client sees this package of a whole person.
I'm going to disagree a little bit. It is part of the job. You said it's not just how good you are at your job. This is part of your job. Part of your job is developing clients. Part of your job is servicing clients in such a way and giving them the information and the insights that they want to go back to you because they know your expertise and what you do. And the same thing for the in-house people. The job when you get hired is managing teams, managing a budget, looking for ways to be more efficient. We think about a potential recession and you're in-house. You have only a few levers in terms of how you reduce expenses and still give people raises. And so when people come up with innovative ways of, maybe doing quicker first assessments or doing something differently to reduce those expenses so you can keep headcount, that makes you stand out, because those are the types of things when you're heading up a group, whether it's claims or litigation or the whole law department, those are the types of decisions you have to make as well as sort of develop talent. So it is part of the job. And I think, especially for those of us who grew up in law, now and then, everyone give us a nice pat on the hat. Our parents are so proud we graduated law school. And, it's a little bit hard to realize that it may be broader what we need to do our jobs.
Yeah.
Are there any specific types of, legal specialties that you're seeing an increase in terms of job openings? Because it seems like the job market just in general is kind of funny right now. There's a lot of industries that are in need of people. What does it look like right now for the legal industry?
I would say there's been a real softening from law firm hires. So you're seeing law firms sort of saying this because there's less transactional work happening, which drove a lot of the talent wars. The in-house market is still good. There's been a slight softening, but it's still good. I do think at some point you're going to see a trickle effect over there. A lot of need for privacy, employment, AI people are looking at as a nucleus, Meta, ESG. These are, sort of the newer areas that I'm seeing a lot of interest in. There tend to be less litigation spots, I will be honest, in terms of in-house. Pharmaceutical biotech is very strong right now too.
I know that I ended up in litigation because I came out of law school in a bad economy, and litigation was the only job to find. Do you see that trend now too, or is it too early to tell?
I think it's too early. I think what's we had seen happen is the transaction, a lot of the law firms started paying a lot of money for transactional lawyers.
I know, it's crazy.
And it was nuts. And so what happened is you didn't have that natural, attrition from some people leaving outside firms to going to in-house, which led to sort of this talent, deficit in-house. I think you're going to start to see some of that switch. And I do think, traditionally, when you have not a great economy, litigation and, bankruptcy does better. And so I do think you will start to see some of that switch. But at the same point, people are just trying to, I'm hearing a lot about hiring freezes, travel freezes from some companies right now, because I think they're trying to figure out between inflation and a possible recession, how they're budgeting for next year. And, and to be honest, everyone's still a little frightened of another winter COVID, right? I know. I personally, I mean, I'm going to listen to the advisors and do what's there, but I'm a little over it myself. Yes.
A little over it. I'm like way over it. I'm like, I'm just done.
We're all just silent, just thinking about the idea of another surge. Was like, oh no.
I can't think about it.
No, I put it in my back of my head, and I'm trying to have a very active fall, and then, hope for the best.
Yes. So, we've talked a lot about people who are already established in their careers, like people who are already, I want to use the term professionals, like they're already there and they're in it. They have the experience. Do you work with like new experience and people breaking out of law school and not breaking, well, yes, technically breaking out of law school. I guess that's a good way to put it. But
kind of like a prison.
Yeah.
I have a few more junior clients, I will say, but most of my clients are a little bit more senior. I think people are so overwhelmed when they start working with a law firm, working on their technical skills and developing them. But I do have a few of what I would say clients with very long-term visions for themselves who have started working towards their long-term plans earlier. And so they are very focused. They know where they want to go in 5, 6, 7 years. It's not a short term. And they have some short-term goals, but they have already started to focus on both either how do they develop a book of business or how do they get to GC. And so it's, I think it's really smart because sometimes people don't look at, especially developing a book of business. A lot of firms don't encourage people to do these things until I think it's a little not too late, but it becomes a panic. You can do a lot of this foundational work much earlier in your career with or without the firm support. And that's something people have to think about so that as they approach it, it doesn't become an overwhelming task. I've had, clients who are approaching that, the decision on partnership or becoming a partner, and the rules change. Like they were told, don't worry about business, don't worry about business. And then they're asked for 7 figures in a year or two, and the panic. Whereas if they had worked on some of the foundational steps ahead of time, it would ease their mind. So it's, thinking about are you someone who likes to pull the all-nighter, or are you someone who likes to get things done ahead of time if you're young in your career?
Yeah.
But I would still encourage you to start talking to people about what the path looks like and what they would have maybe done differently if they had known. Because I think it is helpful to at least do a lot of that network building and cultivation early on, because that takes time. Building relationships don't just happen when you need them. But, we see that all the time.
I will say one thing that I always wish I had done more of in college and in law school is really work on the network. And I didn't do enough of that. And for no real reason, I just didn't know any better, I think. And now I look back at it and I was like, I had like a really good friend in college who always was working on her network. And I was always like, why is she doing this? Like, just have fun. Like, why is she keeping in touch with that internship person? Like, and now like she has climbed the corporate ladder to an extreme extent. And I was like, oh, that's why.
And also, the earlier you do it, it's a habit, and it just becomes part of your life. Like people talk to me a lot about how I keep up with I'm just so used to doing it that I don't even think about it anymore. It's not like I, have to, like people, when you're trying to teach them how to do it, it seems like a big lift, but if it becomes part of your life, it's not so bad. But yes, but you can go back still. There's, people build big networks at really different times in their lives. And the one woman I'm working with who didn't have one, and she was, over 40, 45, 50. And she really put a lot of effort into it. And now she has a really incredible network. But she was very intentional with the steps that she was going to take and how she was going to, because it's not just about meeting people, but having them get to know you so they know your brand, and also being there for that person. It's not a one-way streak about just take. It's about give.
Yes. I mean, think about in friendships, right? If you're in a friendship and your friend is only taking, you get kind of annoyed at that friendship. You're like, why am I here? Like, I'm giving a lot, but I'm not getting anything back. It has to be a give and a take, and one thing I've noticed going back to like building the network is, or what I've gotten over, is the fear of reaching out to people within my network. I have no qualms about reaching out to someone, because the worst that can happen is they say no. And I'm always like, and on the flip side, I know personally, I'm always willing to help someone if they reach out to me. I'm not talking vendors who are trying to sell me nonsense. Like, I mean, like someone who is like, hey, like I'm looking for a job. Do you know someone here? Or hey, like I love to do that for people. And I mean, that's the whole point of all this, right? So
yeah, we all rise together.
Yeah.
And so that's how my approach is. And that if I can help you, I will. And I think that's how most people are. But again, it's also, like you said, not vendors. And it depends what people want. If they want if they're at a law firm and they want an introduction to my client or someone I know just to sell them, maybe not. But if they want to get to know them and they're going to offer them a panel position, or they want to talk to them because they want to see what they're seeing in the market, I'm okay with that, as long as they, are being upfront with me about how they're going to also make the relationship both ways and add value.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I think that's the key point too, is adding value. I mean, I think that's the key theme to everything you've said. Like, have your network add value. Your brand has to add value to who you're trying to attract. You need to add value to the people in your network. Like, you can't just be like, a dead stick on the end of a branch, And
it's not just business value. It can be personal value.
Sure.
People, and often think about, well, I don't know how I can help someone who's a GC. Well, maybe you could. Maybe you're at a firm and that you do a Women's History Month, and she's a woman, and she would love to have something. She's trying to raise her profile for some reason. You can do that for someone. You can find ways. You can, see an article about a place she's going to on vacation that has a list of the best restaurants. It doesn't have to be big. It just has to show that you're listening and you care.
Now, one thing that comes to mind though, we're talking a lot about building your network and being there for people, but how do you set the boundaries so that part of you isn't spilling over to your personal life? And so you have some, you can't be all work all the time. You need to set some boundaries. So what kind of advice do you give to your clients about setting those boundaries? Because it's a lot to do, right? And it can get overwhelming and can take over.
Well, what I try to tell people, again, time's your most valuable asset. So use it wisely. And one thing that I do for networking is, how can I hit as many people as possible who I want to get value, who I want to see again? So, for example, I have a lot of people who used to work for me who I adore. But we get together a couple of times a year for a dinner. So I see all 8 or 9 of them at that dinner. And to be honest, it's a lot more fun than if I was doing, one-on-ones, because everyone is interacting. If you are at a law firm and you're trying to cultivate, can you bring together people who are like-minded so that that it's a special event for them, which I'm going to also key in on that word special, because as I'm putting now, things have to be more pants worthy. What I am seeing in the market is less people showing up at conferences and events unless it's pants worthy. And also people are in the office less. So is there a way I could get, a lot of women in claims litigation together for a nice lunch or dinner or a virtual happy hour? And then it's one event. And, rather than 7 phone calls. The other thing I saw a lot during the pandemic was people get, putting together alumni groups. So let's say, and you represent ABC company insurance company, and a lot of them have left to go into different insurance companies, but you used to have a core team there of 5 that you really work with. You got those 5 people, whatever companies they are, together, and they're happy because they want to see each other and catch up.
Yeah.
But now you've talked to people who are now 3 or 4 different companies.
Yeah.
And, so how can you give value to people and sort of try to bring these bring people together to lesson, and I keep a list to track who I am speaking to and who I owe a phone call to.
Yeah.
And I also, for some people, it's just, a LinkedIn message.
Yeah.
If they can, you have to in your mind say, what is the investment in this person? And, sometimes people just need, some affirmation on their LinkedIn post, and that's good.
Yeah. And I do love that phrase, pants worthy. Like that's a good defining thing. Like, is this thing I'm going to, is it worth me putting on pants?
Well, and from a business development perspective too, is this pants worthy in terms of, is it really going to help my client find my ideal? Is this where my ideal clients are going and hanging out? In the same, pants worthy. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's my new favorite phrase.
You're in a court. Has the pants worthy? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, court, I would say, having seen some of those Zins things where people decided not to get dressed or take it in bed, I would say probably for court, things are pants worthy. But
I would think so.
But
people are seeing lower attendance at events, and it's while there is some of the thing from COVID, a lot of it is also people aren't used to going to events. They have less time. There's a lot of team building, and it also has to be something that is going to benefit them more right now.
I think people are a little more conscious of how they're utilizing their time now. I think after the last 2.5 years or so of this, like I think we're really conscious of how we utilize our time for things. Like I've had that same readjustment. Like I used to go to a lot of conferences, and now I'm like, you know what? I don't know if the conference is worth my time, and I don't think it's worth the money for me to attend this. I think there's a better way I can, connect with people than going to a conference or flying across the country to have a lunch. Maybe it's not worth the time or the money. I think I can have that same connection in another way. I think people are just reevaluating how we do things, and I think it's good. Although I miss some of those things. Conferences are fun, lunches are fun,
Right.
dinners are fun.
But if you go to conference, be intentional. Find out who.
Yes.
At least look at the speakers. Make sure you book a coffee or something so you do it. But be a little bit more intentional and discerning in terms of how you're spending your time.
Yeah. Or have it be a conference that you're actually interested in what is being spoken about. I mean, I feel like I used to approach conferences being like, who is there and who can I talk to? And I didn't really attend any of the things, and unless it was something I was speaking on or I had a friend, whatever it may be. And approaching it in changing our mindset, how we walk into those scenarios, I think you get a different result when you leave.
Yeah, I agree. And I do think there is been this total mind shift in how people are viewing their time and viewing value.
Yes. Yeah. I think we've all realized time, maybe we never didn't occur to us that how valuable time is to us when, I don't know, maybe because we had a lot of it for a while when we all were home.
Yeah, I mean, it's not quite the same thing, but my I was living mostly in my apartment in New York City pre-pandemic, and I really didn't think of all the coffees I was doing as part of building this business. Yeah. And people are like, well, it's in New York. Well, no, it's a half hour on the subway. You get 45 minutes because you want to. And what I realized during the pandemic is I got a day back, literally, from all the commuting time. And I'm not saying I wouldn't still do some of those lunches and some of those coffees, but a day back to actually do some work, that's valuable. And so it's really thinking about how you're spending your time. And it doesn't mean those people aren't important. It just may mean a different way of communicating with them.
And just you reprioritize how you're scheduling things a little bit too. Like, at least I've done it with my own schedule. Like I have certain days, like these are days that I work on, podcast stuff. These are days that I work on case stuff. Unless there's something urgent that needs to happen on a podcast day, that I corner out that day for that type of thing. Cause all these things take time and they're all valuable. I just have to be more cognizant of how I'm doing it.
No. And it's because I said and post pandemic, I'm spending most of my time at my beach cottage.
Oh,
and so when I go into the city, well, we can talk about the difficulties of being on a barrier island with no cars and no stores during the winter. But when I am in the city, then I'm very cognizant of making sure that because I can't, I can do Zoom anywhere, that I'm doing the in-person stuff, and I'm really very booked during those times.
Yeah. Well, we are just about out of time, but I wanted to close with this. You've had such great success to get where you are, but looking back at where you started, would you give your younger self some advice to make it a little bit easier for you?
I would have started, and similar to what you said about the college thing about starting to build the network, I would have started thinking about building the career a little bit earlier and been a little bit more strategic, and thoughtful. I could have had a better impact for my clients and myself if I had taken some of those steps earlier. And, and that's important for people to realize. It's not always just about your career, which is important because it is your life and it enables certain freedom and flexibility the more successful you are. But it also impacts others and the impact you can have on an organization, on a team, when the right people are in those positions. So, thinking about those things earlier, I think, is important.
I think that's great advice to yourself and to anybody listening early in their career, mid-career, late career. I think it's great advice.
And that's the other thing. It's never too late.
No, it's never. So Sheila, thank you so much for joining us. Why don't you let our listeners know where they can find you should they need some coaching, or just they might have to bounce some questions off you. I invite them to get in touch with you.
I'll be happy to link, if you can link in with me, Sheila Murphy /Focus Forward, or you can visit my website, www.focus-forward-consulting.com. It's going to be updated soon. So if you follow me on LinkedIn, you'll know when the whole update comes.
Awesome. Well, and for everyone listening, as always, if you like what you hear and you want to hear more, please like and subscribe to the Defense Never Rests on Apple Podcasts. And you can also find us on YouTube at TDNR Podcast.